Federal Parliament's class of 2016 is getting down to work in Canberra, learning the finer arts of how to be an MP. Last month's election ushered in 39 new members of the House of Representatives. And they enter an exclusive club of just over 1,100 Australians who've ever sat in the House. National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett is talking to two of them in Parliament House.
Well, among the new members of the class of 2016, the Liberals' Julia Banks from the seat of Chisholm in Melbourne, a former business executive and lawyer, and Mike Freelander from Macarthur, Labor MP and paediatrician. Mike, to you first, what drew you into politics and pre-selection, and what about working with children makes you prepared for Parliament?
Well, look, I've always been interested in politics, and what I was finding in the last 5 to 10 years is that many of the problems that families were bringing their kids along with were non-medical problems, access to health care, access to education, and of late, access to housing. And I was finding it very frustrating trying to deal with the needs of the kids and the families that I was looking after, and I thought that really the political sphere was one where I could make a bigger difference to them than I was making as a paediatrician. It has been an enormous privilege to me to look after kids and families for the last 30-odd years, and I thought that I could make a difference to them. And
Julia, your motivation to seek pre-selection and then ultimately to drive through that campaign so fiercely towards victory, what was the motivating factor?
Well, like most people in the electorate of Chisholm, I come from migrant heritage, and you know, I come from very humble beginnings in terms of my father migrated to this country from Greece when he was 15 years old. And I've always, you know, been brought up with liberalist values in terms of hard work, education and financial independence. So I've been a working mum for the last 20 years in business as a chief counsel predominantly for manufacturing companies. So I've always been an advocate for women particularly and for people of different cultural heritage.
All right.
Yeah.
So both of you come into this with your eyes wide open. You will have watched politics from afar in your former lives. Julia, what turned you off about politics? What do you think might be broken about the way Parliament works, if anything?
Well, I think there is definitely our greatest strength is in our unity, and you know, our greatest strength is what we share rather than what divides us, and hence, you know, I bring that background of always contributing to diversity committees, be that and equal opportunity regardless of people's ethnicity or sexual preference or gender, and I think that approach in politics, rather than that sort of personal politics, is something that, you know, is needed.
Sure, and Mike, Tony Smith told you all this morning that it is a contest of ideas in the Parliament. It's meant to be. Sure. Does it go too far in your view? Is there any change you would try to bring?
Well, look, I agree with Julia to an extent. I think we're all in this together, and no matter where we come from, we do want the best for our community as a whole, and I think there is much more room for compromise. And whilst it is a battle of ideas, I think that usually in Australia that we have found a way to compromise and do what is best for the community. I come from a job where I've seen people with lots of problems, often not of their own making, really struggle, and I think that we're all in this together, and we can help everyone to achieve the Australian dream.
Now, I'm noticing a bit of diversity, and you've mentioned the diversity word, Julia, in this class of 2016. Do you think there's been too much narrowness, though, in those who've been drawn to politics in the past? I mean, I think John Howard observed that parties can get too choked off with former staffers, union officials. Do you think this Parliament is any more diverse than previous ones?
Look, I think, well, certainly in the Liberal Party, on the Liberal side of politics, indeed, many of us, indeed like our Prime Minister, have led a life in business and a life that reflects the lives of the communities which we represent, rather than, you know, and I for one am not a career politician. As I mentioned, for the last 20 years I've been a working mum, working like, you know, all the other people in my electorate, and I think being able to have that life experience and bringing it into the political arena is really critically important.
And Mike, do you have any observations about that, bringing some life experience that is not the union movement or not a political advisor?
Look, I think both sides of politics have realised one of the big problems we've been facing from people is a sense of disconnection from politics. And I think there is a move to make our politicians more diverse and to come from different backgrounds that have had some life experience. I think that's certainly happening in the Labor Party. That's one reason why I was pre-selected, that I come from outside of politics, if you like.
All right, well, you've got a lot of rules and regulations to absorb. What's most daunting about what you've discovered about the job so far?
Look, the most daunting thing for me is to learn how to deal with that somewhat adversarial contest on the floor of Parliament. I think I will find that difficult.
Julia, likewise?
Oh, I think well, I'm legally trained, so I like rules, so I think I'll absorb that. But there is a lot of information to absorb, and indeed at this morning session it's sort of like being the new kids in school, where you're trying to, or indeed starting a new job, so to speak, where you're trying to learn the ropes and everything. So I think that will be a challenge for all new members, as it has been historically.
All right, so committee and policy work. Julie, what do you want to immerse yourself in?
I think, you know, the 3 E's for me: economics, education, employment. Those things are key, and those are areas where I have the most experience, so I believe I'll be able to therefore make the most contribution.
All right, and Mike, I think it will go without saying, won't it, that health will be part of the answer for you?
Health and access to healthcare is a big focus for me. I should just mention I don't like rules. I'm not very good with rules.
You're going to struggle in this place.
And most systems, I think, can be subverted in some way, but I'm about compromise, but also about equity. I think that I want to see equity for all the kids and families that I care for.
All right, well, a lot to learn and plenty that lies ahead to be achieved. But Mike Freelander and Julia Banks, thanks for your observations on day one.
Greg. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Greg.